Hey guys, if you're seeing this video, it means you've probably bumped into Salty Empires, which is a spectating tool for Age of Empires 2. We lean on Capture Age to manage our replays. It's a great replay service, and it's the UI that you see, but it can be overwhelming. That stated, there's a lot of information in that you can just look at here and immediately know what's going on in a game in the event that you're trying to make an informed bet. So this is kind of that walkthrough. I'll start with the basics. Age of Empires 2, if you're not familiar, is a RTS real-time strategy game where players have four different resource groups. There's wood, there's food, there's gold, and there's stone. If you look up top, you'll see that there's a number underneath each section. This number is how many villagers the player has allocated to that resource. Villagers, how many total villagers you have, it gets divvied up to what resource they're getting typically. And in this case, blue, Alamander, me, has 13 on wood and 9 on food. I have no gold production and no stone production. This can be used to identify what strategy people are trying to do. Gold is a really, really important key resource, and you'll see players scrap on locations of the map around gold piles for that reason. Even in this case, there's only a couple piles of gold that I can even find. There's this one, and typically players have one or two, about two gold mines around them. They have a primary, a secondary, and there's usually another one that's like further out. Um, but but yeah, so the top bar can be used to identify where the villagers are allocated. On the right, we have a number. This is the age progress number. There are 4 ages in Age of Empires 2. There's Dark Age, there's Feudal Age, Castle Age, and Imperial Age. In Dark Age, you're heavily restricted on what you can do. All the way to Imperial, you have almost everything that your civilization has to offer. The bars underneath this. So if you look, you see how there's a 2 bar, and then there's a lit up house and a grade house for Alamander, but there's 2 lit up houses for red, and then there's a bar underneath that. Every age has preconditions that are needed to be fulfilled before you can click up to go to the next age. In this case, Feudal Age requires you to have 2 Feudal Age buildings and enough money to pay for the tech. In this case, it's 800 food and 200 gold to get to the Castle Age, which is the next age available. So players typically, this is the first big crux where players will make a decision on whether they want to double down and spend more money and not save to apply feudal age pressure, or if they want to play a defensive approach and try to get to castle age by spending less and getting there a little bit quicker. So you can see that the bottom bars aren't filled. The red bar is food, and the yellow bar is gold. This is the amount of resources required to go to the next stage. As you can see, now that there are 2, both of them are fulfilled, both of the houses, both of the building requirements are fulfilled, I still can't go to the next stage because I need that resource count. So you can use this to kind of keep track of who is positioning themselves to get a tech lead on the opponent. In the center, let's go through some of these numbers that you see. We're going to start from the left and go to the right. So we have 42 over 115. That is how many people exist in Teal's economy versus how many he can support. Population is based on how many houses you have. And if you don't have houses, you can't build any more units. So if you have 50 population, but you've lost a bunch of houses and you can only support 40 food, you would need to build additional houses up till that number in order to get your production rolling again. To the right, there's a military value. This dollar sign shows how much money is currently spent on military that exists already. In this case, Teal has a military here of Spear Skirm, and Red also has a military here of Lights and Skirmishers. Because this army is significantly bigger than the other army, you can see that for 45, I've invested more in military, which, as we just talked about, that could mean that I'm falling tech behind. Depends if I'm getting damage or whatnot. Below that is the idle economy units count. Idle economy units is when you have a villager who normally would be working, who is just standing around. This tends to be a good tell on whether harass is really mattering, right? People get a little bit flippant with their villagers, and they're not getting resources for them, or they're not building something, so they're idle. They're just chilling. Then to the right, we have a actual numerical count of how many military versus economy units we have. In this case, you can see that I'm putting some pressure down here with the Spear Skirm army, but even though I have 11 military units to his 7, I only have 39 economic units or villagers to his 43. So he has a small economic advantage if he's able to not take too much damage here. In the center, these bars are simply comparative bars for those numbers. This 13 is more than 7, so the bar is swinging in this direction. And, you know, it's relatively even, but it's swinging a little bit in his direction because he's 2 villagers up. So that's the top bar. Then there are these sections here. You can see at a glance how many villagers somebody has at any given time. I have 41. There are 8 skirmishers and 4 spearmen. These little boxes below basically are your composition. Even if you're not looking at them on the map, we can see that he only has 6 skirmishers, and I have a bunch more invested. On the left side here, we have these. This is a tech area. Anytime somebody gets a specific research tech, it takes time to get it. And during that research time, Capture Age shows that to the left side and the right side respectively, surrounded by the color of that civilization. So in this case, I'm getting fletching, which is going to make my skirmishers stronger, and I've started the tech to Castle Age. I've clicked up. So you see how this shield went gray now? We're going Castle Age. And in Castle Age, there are also new requirements to go to the Imperial Age. So each age kind of has those requirements, and you can use the shield to track progress in that way. Then let's also talk about this view. When capture or when the auto spectate tool identifies that there are big combats, what it does is it will try to grab it'll try to click and drag and then press F. And the reason it does this is to show you a cool view in the bottom left. You can see in the bottom left that there is I'll pull my mouse over. It's this area over here, where it'll show you the total health and the total kills of an army. In this case, if this was an actual bit of combat, we would be able to track that the skirmisher. We'll go back to an example for that in a little bit. But that's the reason that it grabs it, and I'll walk you through that in a moment while we wait for an actual fight to occur. On the right side, so now we're going to head to the bottom right. There's also information you can find here to make your bet as good as it can be. The first is the KD. This is the number of kills and deaths respectively from player to player for the whole game. So if one person's killed 30 units and the other one's only killed 3, there's probably an advantage for the player who has killed more units. There are exceptions, but there's not too many. Then there is Eco KD. This shows how much damage you've done to a player's economy. This is villagers, right? You can see that because Teal has been on the aggressive here, he's gotten 2 villager kills, but he hasn't lost any villagers of his own. Then we have Res collected. Res collected is the general resources collected by an entire civilization. This is the entire game. All game, even though Teal's had great pressure, Red, who had that economy lead, has collected about 800 more res or resources. And with that, some of you can see here that he's floating way too much gold. But that's this column here. Then we're going to skip these two because I don't think these matter too much. Um, the point of this is to show like the value of people's army in gold. The reason is because gold is a hard resource. Basically, it's an important resource. It's very key for anything late game, and it's kind of a map limiter. So people like to track that, but I'm going to skip over that for now. The next thing I think is really important is the idle TC time. Idle TC is so in competitive play. This is one of the most key things that you can track. Basically, when you have a town center, how long it spends not doing anything, not clicking up, not building villagers, that is the idle TC time. In this case, I have 2 minutes and 45 seconds of idle TC time, and Red has 3 minutes and 30 seconds. Now, to be fair, both of his TCs are idle, so this number is skyrocketing to the moon. Lastly, we have our worker efficiency. Worker efficiency is the amount of time workers have spent gathering, building, and repairing in the last minute divided by the total number of worker time available in the last minute. What that basically means is if you have villagers walking around everywhere and not really doing anything or not working, if a bigger number here means your economy is more efficient. In this case, I'm 81% efficient with my economy, and he's 78% efficient with his economy. One of the reasons for this is because he's under pressure, and I'm really not. My workers are they're chilling, and that's kind of the gist. I'm going to show you the click and drag here. This is a great example where you can see the ranges when you click and drag. You can see the ranges of the units. This teal circle shows if range units exist, how far they can hit. And when you can see the health on this side in the bottom left, this is the respective health of everybody in the click and drag, which will show you that like I've gotten 5 kills, although I'm losing a lot of my effective health right now. It's kind of a huge brawl, but you can see his health is decreasing a lot quicker, and there's a lot of villagers in combat. This is, you can use this to kind of track who's winning the position. So I've gotten 20 kills. He's gotten 7. So because of that, if I'm a viewer and a spectator, I would be able to identify that this was a very favorable fight for Teal, right? And I think that might be it. So there's one other thing I'll check, actually, just to tell you. In the top left and the top right, we have these. I'm going to go ahead and pause this just so there's not additional noise. In the top left and the top right, we have these technologies. These are basically all the technologies that are available to your civilization. And you can tell if somebody has gotten these technologies by whether there is a bold version of that color there. In this case, I can tell that I have Bodkin Arrow, which is the second archer upgrade, and because I have 2 hard teal color palettes. I don't even have access to this tech, which is why there's nothing there. But these are important techs, and largely they do one particular thing, right? Like a bow saw is going to help your lumber people. A horse collar is going to help your farmers. Ballistics is going to help your archers. Handcart's going to help your villagers. Forging is going to help your long swords or your spearmen. Scale barding armor is going to help your knights. Scale mail armor is going to help your soldiers. Bodkin arrow is going to help your archers, and padded archer armor is also going to help them archers. But these are you'll always see these up top. And there are times where somebody who has less units but has more teched versions of those units stand to gain quite a lot. I'll go ahead and I'll press T and I'll show you this. If we look at the area of effect around the skirmisher, that's a pretty large attack range. But if I was to go back to the beginning of the game when we were originally sending skirmishers around, and let's see if I can find one here. Look how small that range is. The difference between those 2 ranges is upgrades. Every time you get an additional archer upgrade, you gain 1 range. And every time you get an additional armor or damage upgrade for a unit, you get +1 or +2 damage, depending on the tech. You can use this to generally track how people are, progressing and stuff like that. But yeah, the last thing I want to show you is the bottom right. So here you'll see there's two colors. There's going to be blue and red, and there is a number in parentheses. This number in parentheses is their ELO score. That is also present here directly underneath the icon of their civilization icon, and it's also in the parentheses. To the right of that is an in-game score that is calculated by Age of Empires 2. It can be used to generally understand who has the lead in a game. Now, it's not always right. There's a variety of things that it doesn't do well, but it can give you clues to who is in the lead if it's really, really crazy and it's hard to tell. So in this case, Revan is about 100 points above me for whatever reason. And, some of that could be the additional workers. Some of that could be, it could be whatever. He's got 2 workers on me and I have 3 military on him. And because of that, if I don't get an advantage short term, the economy will eventually matter a lot more. Because again, I don't get additional resources with these troops. I just have the ability to cause damage, right? So yeah, that's Capture Age in a nutshell. Salty Empires, the auto spectator that I developed there drives the camera using primarily this diamond at the bottom and drawing heat maps and stuff like that. So sometimes you'll catch things that are off screen. But in cases where like a previous army was selected and we look away, you still will have access to that bar in the bottom left. So if that ever occurs and you're like, oh, I wonder what's happening, you can kind of use this to track what's going on, even if we're not looking at the combat. And I think that's it. That is it. Thanks for your time. Thanks for being here and hanging out and all the support as always, and we'll talk soon.